Stories like to communicate the narrative concept of balance through their characters. And while it's something important for their main character to learn, it's a lesson or message for the audience to think about during the main character's journey. And it's something this cute little number called Gnosia made me think about. And the theme of balance in fiction is not new. I imagine most people have watched Star Wars, so I don't think I need to teach anybody the concept behind the light and dark side of the Force, but people absolutely misunderstand what George Lucas was ultimately trying to share with people. General audiences really do ignore the subtlety behind it. They tend to see it as something surface level like the yin-yang symbol, which is also not a very on-the-nose concept either. The duality of it in Taoism and/or Taoism is considered a universal symbol in Chinese philosophy, and you see it used in fiction all the time. You get a bunch of MC needs to understand the villain's POV, where the easiest example of that is probably Naruto, but we also get a lot of MCs being subjected to similar circumstances as a villain, where Kaneki is probably the best example for that. He's pretty much put in the same position as all of the antagonistic figures in his series. And a very important takeaway from these two characters is they're both globally rejected by their respective societies. Now, why that's important and how Gnosia made me think about it is what we're going to be expanding on today. And don't worry if you're new here, because we always start our discussions without spoilers first. Gnosia, being what seems to be a very intricate and explorative visual novel, is likely the reason I'm thinking this is the most underrated anime from fall. Every week, I'm either asking myself questions or questioning characters on what they did or didn't do in an episode. And that is something that I love about this anime. I said this in my last Gnosia video, but it uses a cast that is on the surface not easy for the layman to understand or relate to. So it's important I finish talking about Naruto and Kaneki so we all understand the context to this discussion. The isolation these characters go through has to do with how they relate to an audience. Naruto's a young kid that's ostracized and bullied. It's easy enough to relate to, or at least be empathized with. But what about Kaneki? I see his relationship with Rize like I would see somebody who is not exposed to many social opportunities. Rize comes off like someone that's too good to be true. She has all the things Kaneki would value in someone, except for one very important problem. And relating that back to life, situations like that can ruin us and force us to relearn about ourselves. Where if you've ever been in a toxic relationship with a friend, partner, parent, family member, coworker, etc., then you should be able to understand that, because depending on the story being told, this can be very important for the audience to understand why characters may choose the path they do. Naruto goes the light route, but Sasuke exists to show us the dark side of it. But that's contrasted by Itachi, who is Sasuke's motivation for going the dark route, and as an audience member, you kind of understand, but he is kind of being a raging pussy. But that's not the point. Sasuke going the dark route exists to show that Naruto chose the right path. And why I know it's the right path is because later we learn Itachi only went the dark route to be a necessary evil so the light wouldn't be lost or overshadowed. In order to have one, you need to have the other. I know. Crazy. But Kaneki's situation is different. He's left alone in a world where he never had much in the first place, and the minute he sort of got something, it was more of the same shit, different day. And because that happened, he had to reevaluate who he was, but he decided to avoid that and who he became. Remember I said he lacked social experience? Well, all his actions and relationships he formed in his new situation ended up causing him deeper problems because he chose to ignore a key aspect of himself. It led to him losing himself and having a multiple personality disorder situation. But this also led to him going down all of the paths that could be available to him. I didn't finish the manga, but I assume it ended with him confronting his deflecting and avoidance issues. But him dealing with all of that was due to his lack of balance, because he was only ever shown one side to life. The only reason he was able to grow was because he made the most wrong and self-destructive decisions possible, because that's all he knew. So he needed one of his personalities to be someone who could envision a different side of life. If you know how a growth mindset works, you have to think and act as the future you. So if you've never pursued a goal or let yourself see even the smallest positive thing in the most difficult hardship you've dealt with, you may find it honestly impossible impossible to ever see the positive side of anything. And the inverse is obviously also true. If you've never dealt with anything problematic, you won't understand or be able to even perceive what struggling is. And that can make things feel hollow, to the point where you may artificially create problems. Or you might just be a problem. And something important I want to preface about Gnosia with that is how the anime uses avoidance and contriving artificial problems as a narrative device, where the anime shuts out any irrelevant character, including the MC. If Yuri's not properly equipped to deal with the timeline he's in, he's almost immediately removed. But if he's not and he lucks his way through the deduction piece, he'll be thrown right back into a very similar timeline. The only way Yuri moves forward is if he learns. And the more he learns, the more complicated the story becomes. And what makes Gnosia so cool is how those complications won't necessarily be focused on in the episode. Because if Yuri doesn't see it, he'll miss it and have to go through it again until it's a lot more on the nose for him. Something important I've taken away is how this anime wants Yuri to be well-rounded. Or like we've been discussing, balanced. But before I go further, I gotta get this 2-episode review out of the way. So everybody that doesn't want spoilers, go to this time. I see you in fucking 2 seconds. Okay, don't lynch me, but like, that ending song for a season finale in episode 12 was kinda heat, no? Episode 12 had such a different air to it. I loved how simple and soft it was. For a grand finale, I won't lie, it's something that I do enjoy depending on the type of story I'm watching. And I think a lot of people would have been extremely disappointed if they had to wait longer than like a week or even 2 weeks for their second season. But for me, as a finale, I definitely left feeling fulfilled. I would have been annoyed, but I would have been highly anticipating the next season. I thought it was a fulfilling ending, and really that's all I can ask for. And now we're gonna break down why I thought that. I know we're doing this a little backwards, but be mindful the script is 2 weeks old, and I had to change how I talk about this episode. My key takeaway from this first core was balance. I was constantly thinking about how Yuri needs to juggle these different dynamics when I was watching episode 12. Between the social deduction game, the social emotional learning aspect, and the in-story real-world problems. And those are just like the surface level things. There's a bunch of underlying stuff there too. But if any of it was lacking, or if he was getting a little overzealous and started jumping the gun a little bit, there would be a lot of long-term consequences. And we see how those early mistakes Yuri made delayed his ability to reapproach the issues with Rakio, SQ, and Gina. For the audience, it was a 10-episode journey. For Yuri, and we're not too sure how many timelines he's been through, but it could have been 100 for all we know. And that's reinforced by this week's episode when Yuriko mentioned it, but that's for the next video. But for any of you who remembered Yuriko confronting our little Riz Lord in episode 4, I think, she mentioned he would need to confront his own distortion. I'm just saying. Bro, it's so fucked up what happened to Gina. Dude, she's unironically really cute. She just wanted to live like a normal life. She has such like humble ambitions. She's like the literal epitome of innocence. She just wanted to keep the people she valued close, which seems to be related to the hardship or difficulty Earth was having when she was a kid, and that probably resulted in some fear of abandonment or loss of a loved one, which is potentially related to a father, mayhaps. But her infatuation with space seems to be related to the fact she lived with the mole men from Attack on Titan. And I bet when she attempted to take Yuri outside the ship again to develop that trust with him, when we seen her do it the first time, that was not her trying to be deceitful, but her trying to maintain the humanity that she still had. Especially when we seen how Yuri collapsed her walls and made her start freaking out about being a Gnosia. I believe she wanted to go out to space so that she could trust herself that she wouldn't succumb to the thing that she despised, or I guess in this case feared most. And that brings us to the big episode and our video takeaway, that point of balance. It's clear now that the Gnosia are not a bad species. It's why I mentioned Chinese philosophy earlier as well. The yin-yang is a universal symbol because it represents more than just balance. It's about harmonious living. The Tao is about moral neutrality, which means it's a non-judgmental perspective, and it encourages more natural results because not everything is as it seems. It is about living with and embracing everything life has to offer. And I know this concept of harmonious living is something the anime wants to show us. There's just too much emphasis on the diverse cast. Since it is a sci-fi story, if everyone was just Homo sapiens, straight, and cisgendered, it would make the world feel very small. We even see that the characters are very unbothered, maybe except for Yuri in the beginning, he was kind of bothered, but everyone for the most part is unbothered by these diverse traits. We've even seen characters forego their sex and gender because it's only a burden to them. For them, it has no relevance to their identity, and they would rather the focus be on who they are, not what they are. The Gnosia, I believe, may be similar. If I think about their unique way of eliminating people, I wonder if they were forced to become deceitful because of some universal or religious propaganda. Because what if the Gnosia infection is due to something the Celestials did? Remember in episode 12, cyberization was mentioned. To me, it comes off like a religious sacrifice being advertised as ascending. What if the Gnosia infection is an artificially created species? I could also absolutely see the Gnosia infection being a contrast to whatever the Celestials are, which might be a reason why Yuriko is no longer with the Celestials. But the Gnosia being able to do that cyberization thing and being called an infection seems a little convenient, because what if the Silver Key is also considered an infection too? The Gnosia infection might just make lying more natural because it's a defense mechanism evolved over time, so them sticking together might relate to them only being able to trust one another. Clearly, Yuri helping Gina also has to do with him needing to save Gnosia later. We've seen 2 instances where Yuri has been understanding of the Gnosia, and the Gnosia in both situations being very emotionally sensitive to it. The more Yuri has learned, the more complicated things have become, and my point about balance is the key. Remember, the Silver Key wants the knowledge to life. If we think about the entirety of the Gnosia world, it's using concepts that can involve the entire universe, not just a select planet or species. And that's why I talk about the yin-yang. It's a cosmic manifestation of complementary forces, not opposing ones. Gnosia uses an eccentric cast because balance relates to everything about life. The yin-yang refers to light and dark, or femininity and masculinity. Passive or active, it can also look like moderation, boundaries, or risk-taking. In fiction, we frequently watch characters struggle with balance. It's something that can even be weaponized depending on the plot. It forces characters to decide on one thing over the other, that weighing the scales concept. It utilizes the idea of opportunity cost. If I do this, what do I lose? And Yuri needs to know how to be socially aware, so he can get the most information in a timeline without losing anything crazy, and this anime loves to remind us about that. It wants Yuri to take the most fulfilling paths, that way he maximizes the amount of information he gains, but what makes this anime so cool is that's not the only thing it needs him to focus on. But it's better if you watch the anime and figure that out for yourself. So you should let me know with a like and comment if I encouraged you to go and do that. And make sure you subscribe if you do, so you can come back and watch the spoiler section of this video. We talk about some pretty cool stuff there, and I wouldn't want you to be left out. As for my anime watchers and visual novel players that were able to watch the whole video, if you're not subscribed yet, definitely do that for more Gnosia content. You don't have to, but it helps. But for everybody else, I want to hear what you guys thought about the discussion this week, because I'm going to think about what you guys say and incorporate it into the next video when I talk about episodes 13 and 14. And with that video, moving forward, we will just be discussing the episodes. We're deep enough in the anime where people are probably just looking for straight up Gnosia content. And for those of you who've been patient with my absence, thank you so much. I will have the episode 13-14 review deal deep dive thing done and either posted in the middle of this week or on Saturday to give me more time. I'll probably make a post about it, so bye!